Hi, everybody. I gave that episode a 5. Big time. Big time. Thanks, everybody, for being here. I'm Jim Halterman. I'm the West Coast Bureau Chief for TV Guide Magazine. I'm so excited to talk about this episode. I could go on, but we've got somebody here I think you want to meet. We all know Bryce Dallas Howard from her stellar film work in The Village, As You Like It, Jurassic World, Pete's Dragon, and of course The Help, which she won a SAG Award for Outstanding Performance by a Cast in a Motion Picture. No surprise, she's nominated again for this in the Outstanding Performance by a Female in a Television Movie or Miniseries. So let's welcome Bryce Dallas Howard.
What a cozy theater. It's
Cozy.
state of the art.
Just hanging out in somebody's living room, just talking about a cool TV show. There's so much to talk about with this. I was like,
just say something first.
Yeah.
The fact this is on Netflix, so I really appreciate you guys coming here to watch it. It's very I think it would be very disheartening if I came and I was like, oh, there's no one here. But I would also understand. So.
or if there's room for everybody with their iPads or something watching it together. So I want to go back just a little bit because I was looking at early credits, and a lot of your early credits are in your dad's films in little parts. So it seems like it would be a given that this would be your career, but I don't know if that's the case. Talk about that a little bit. Just this is your path.
Oh yeah. So when I was so going back a little bit. Wait, is that my? Oh my gosh, you look like my brother. You look like my brother. I was like, wait a second, is that Reed Howard? Does anyone ever tell you that you give off like a Ron Howard vibe or anything? Well, see, there you go. I felt it.
It could be an episode of Black Mirror where all of a sudden people in your family they look like
exactly.
Who knows?
It's like my life with Jessica Chastain. So so I think oh my word, what was your question?
Just if acting was always your path.
Oh, so my parents have they've been together since they were 16 years old. They met in John Burroughs High School in Burbank, and which is cool, yeah. And they, my dad he had a Super 8 camera that he was always making movies on, and he would kind of force my mom to be in them, but she's not an actress, and she's severely freaked out about things like that. And he, because she's sort of been at least in the background of every single thing that he's done, he's superstitious about it now. So he kind of did that. I was like the beneficiary of that superstition because in my family, if you wanted to, you could be in the, I will use the wonderful term that Joe Wright used when doing this, the director of this. You could be a supporting background artist. So he referred to anyone who is in the background as supporting artist, which is appropriate and real, and for real, yeah. And so I would come and I would when I was 7, I got to be in Parenthood, in the scene where the roller coaster thing is happening, and it's the play with the kids and everything, and so. So I did that, and then just truly, they would kind of throw all the kids in last minute, and one by one, that I'm one of 4, kind of every child started to sort of mutiny. They were like, "Don't do this to me anymore," and I'm like, "Oh, I love it." So I think that, I did love it. But what I loved about it was not necessarily the performance part of it was really fun, because I remember when I was 10, I was in the background of a scene in Far and Away where Tom Cruise is crying because his father has died, and he's with the coffin, and I was one of the people, a part of the procession, and I remember this so vividly. I was 10, and there was a shot where the camera was moving in and it landed on me, and so I decided. I had not declared at all that I wanted to act or anything. I wasn't in any school plays. I never knew any of the lines, in school plays. My parents had no inkling. But every single take, I would cry. And then after my dad would yell cut, I'd be like, like I do this like, oh, it's just pretend. Like, and he didn't say anything. He wasn't like, oh, good job. Or like, no one said anything. And actually I recently revealed this to him. I was like, you didn't comment to my like crying on cue when I was 10. He was like, oh, that was the B cam. I was watching Tom in the A cam. But it was kind of this interesting moment. I think it's good that I wasn't necessarily affirmed for that, but it was like the first kind of time that I tried to pretend to be something and feel something that I wasn't feeling at all. And then that just kind of, I just kind of would play around with that and like read lines in front of the mirror, because none of us do that, and you know, kind of get into high school plays. And then when it was time for me to apply to universities, that was sort of like my moment of truth, where I was like, yeah, I really want to pursue this and give this a shot. But I think what I fell in love with as a kid was really the movie making process and being a part of a crew, because I was sort of kept away from the actors because like I was a kid on set. Like that's, you know, like that's like dangerous to begin with, possibly illegal. And you certainly don't want your kids like around your main actors. So I think, although like my daughter on Pete's Dragon, I was always like, go talk to Mr. Bob. Like, tell me what Mr. Bob says. But, so I'm the opposite. But I think that, that's sort of, I think that's the thing, because then I did theater and I love theater, but I really, when I started making movies, I was like, this is it. This is the sweet spot. Like that was kind of, I think, the thing, that sense of family that I had as a young kid.
Well, and because yeah, it was a good answer though. Your career is mostly film, and so I don't know if this isn't your first TV job, is it?
No, it is.
It is really okay. Wow. Yeah. Okay, yeah. Not a bad one to start with. But you guys, this episode was written by Mike Schur, who created Parks and Recreation and Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and Rashida Jones, who you know. But I want to know, you know, since your dad has a little history in television, what did he have to say about you doing this in this particular episode, assuming he knew about it?
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, he was just, oh gosh, I feel so bad for my dad. I never tell him anything until it's like about to happen or already happened. It's this very weird thing. Because I ask him his advice. We talk almost every day. But I'll be like, oh, I forgot. Like, I'm doing this thing. I'm going to be leaving in a week. Joe Wright, Black Mirror. It's really cool, Dad. Like, it's stuff like that, usually. But I do remember I sent him, there was a treatment that I got for this right before the holidays. This was not last year, but the year before. You guys, like, I shot it early last year. So right before the holidays, 2 holiday seasons ago, and the script wasn't done yet, and I needed to kind of just like say yes to a treatment, which was no problem because it was Black Mirror and Joe Wright. And I remember over the holidays I shared the treatment with my dad, and he was like, "Oh, this is cool. This is really like, wow, this is kind of like the Twilight Zone." And you know, and that was that. And then he watched it with me together. At my house, and it was just me and him. And afterwards, he like got up. He was really uncomfortable, and he like got up and he was like, "Oh yeah, that was really good, Bryce. That was really good. Okay, so listen, I gotta head off." And he like wouldn't make eye contact with me. I think, and he said later, he was like, "That was deeply disturbing," and he was like, "That was hard, like to kind of watch that." So that was cool.
Well,
hard to watch.
Well, and I'm sure you got a sense of that in the treatment early on before you even saw the whole script. But what was it that made you want to do this?
Well, you know, I mean, I think, many reasons. It's like not like we would all want to be a part of this, right? Like it's one of those duh things. Like those are the jobs that I love when it's just like, oh yeah, duh, I'd want to do that.
Well, yeah, and if you guys don't know Joe Wright, he directed Pride and Prejudice, Atonement. He's an amazing director. So working with him, I'm sure was a draw.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. And we had a general meeting 10 years prior for Atonement, and he said I was completely wrong for Atonement, but but we connected over the meeting and all of that, and then 10 years later a call out of the blue, and that happened. So those things do happen, which is very cool. I mean, once a decade, but I'll take it, right? So I think, but on a deeper level, I mean, I feel it's so interesting because we're here. You know how like people say, like what we're doing here is not like my uncle Clint Howard. Who do you guys know? Okay. So he's awesome. He's hilarious. His email address is mrshitty blah 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 blah.com. So it's like twins, like him and my dad. It's like Arnold Schwarzenegger and Danny DeVito. Like he's this very honest person and hilarious, and they're best friends. So he always says, he's like, acting's not brain surgery. Like he's always sort of like saying things like that to me, and then. Bless you. And then I've always sort of wrestled with that because it's hard to commit your life to something that feels like it's not, it doesn't have a greater sense of purpose. And I think our job is to, in a way, obviously it's to generate empathy and tell stories, and open people's eyes and all of that. But it's also we're at a time right now where things are changing very rapidly, and the world is changing very rapidly, and there's very real-time consequences for how rapidly the world is changing because of the influence of technology. And I think it's our job as storytellers to tell these cautionary tales so that when we need to make choices as a society, we have kind of vetted those choices. And things are so political and polarizing right now. And it's no side is going to get convinced to go to the other side. Like that's just not happening right now. But stories have a way of, our hearts are open when we're watching a story. We want to be entertained. We want to be moved, and we want to grow and learn. And I think that, it's stuff like this. Like I'm going to have my kids watch this before they join social media. It's like, enough said, sweetheart. It's like, so you won't be joining social media. That's my way of telling you can't. No. So I think, so of course, I wanted to do this job because of all the creative elements and what a character. And they're like, can you gain weight? I'm like, sure. Like, easy. Consider it done. But it is this sort of like, it hit this sweet spot where I felt like, oh, this is working out something for me personally with social media and all of that, and maybe can help to contribute to that conversation so that we can help to, have some lead people to insight, and ourselves as well. So, yeah.
Well, you have kids, so it's probably easy to gain weight because I know kids there's always mac and cheese and nuggets. I'm always like, leave some on the plate for me. Exactly. But that was something they asked you to do, or it was your choice. Talk about that and how you did it.
Yeah, it's we all know how I did it. No secret there. It was the holidays. So I read the treatment, and the character's name is Lacey Pound, and it was something that kind of it was sort of a like subversive storytelling in a way. This story of a woman who was bullied and who has for her weight and wants everyone's approval and is just not quite there yet. So I was sort of like, all right, I'm not gonna show up like looking like how I look in Jurassic or something. Like that would be it felt false. And it was December and the holidays were around the corner. And I was like, well, why not, right? So I ended up actually gaining 35 pounds. And it was really, it helped so much. It really did, because it gave me, it's sort of like the conversation that goes on in your head, like when your appearance is changing, potentially, in a way that is not necessarily like your aspirational self. That conversation needed to exist in like Lacey's mind. It really did. And it had to exist in my mind in order to kind of feel that. And it just, I was really happy about that. And it took like 6 months to lose. It's crazy. Whoa.
Well, I want to ask you a little more about Lacey because I'm not sure how it was when you read the script, but when you're watching it, there's times where you're not sure if you should like her or root for her, or because she's not the nicest person. But as an actor, do you have to like the character you're playing, or do you have to at least understand? I guess tell me about that though. Do you have to like your character even if she's unlikable?
You know what? Gosh, that's such a good question. I don't know, like, what you guys feel about this. I don't. You know what? I think I maybe don't totally connect with the word like. I guess I have to understand the character. So I have to understand the character because most people, a lot of, so blah, blah, blah. Lacey feels self-loathing. She hates herself. I didn't have to like Lacey. Lacey didn't like Lacey. And so I think that was kind of part of understanding her was just sort of like that she does things or she feels things, or it's just that are, at the end of the day, she looks at herself in the mirror and she's kind of like, there's no children here, obviously. You fucking suck. She hates herself. And so I think I had to sort of figure out why she hated herself and kind of what went into that. But it's also really fun because we rehearsed for this. So there were a lot of discoveries, and then we shot very quickly, and we shot 6 days a week. And on the 7th day, folks would come over to my apartment and we would rehearse for the next week. And there were many discoveries made about the character, and I felt by the end of it, Joe and I both were like like we loved her. Like he was like, I wrote in my gratitude journal this morning that I was grateful for Lacey. And it's just, I think by the end of it, it's like our hearts broke so much for her, and we felt it ourselves. And then when we were shooting the wedding scene, that was some of the last scenes that we actually shot. And when the moment where I'm getting like carried away, like there was no dialogue or anything, and I was like, and we just decided, like, I was just like, I love you. And we realized, oh my gosh, this is like a dark romantic comedy. Like this is a love story in a way. She loves Nene, and she hates Nene, and she hates herself, and but she cares about herself also, and she's gonna fight for herself. Like so I like playing a character like that, where you get to do that. The thing that's hard is when you're playing a character, you're like, I have no idea what their point of view is. This feels really ambiguous. Like that's so scary.
Well, the great thing about Black Mirror, if you guys haven't watched any of the other episodes, they're all very different, but they're all amazing. But like with this one, I started maybe the first 15 minutes, I was kind of thinking, oh, this is kind of comedic, it's kind of funny, and then it quickly takes a turn. I was saying like, okay, this is more horrific and all that. But how do you describe it? How do you categorize an episode like this?
Well, it's okay. What is it? It's a satire. In a way, it's like a social satire, and it's a dark social satire with comedic elements. I think it's hard to describe, and that's why it's also, just as actors, like it's so, like, thank God for Netflix, and thank God for all these, cable television and all these opportunities to do these things that are kind of, my dad calls them tweeners, where they're between two genres. And films, stories, books that are tweeners are always the best. They're always the best, but they're always the hardest, because to get people to kind of open it up, they're like, well, what do you mean? It's like a sci-fi romantic comedy thing. Like, you don't, but those are the ones that are actually, that have kind of the big ideas. So Black Mirror, yeah, it's really, I think it's a social commentary on, yeah.
Yeah, very much. Did you shoot the scenes in order? Because there's such a feeling of just things getting worse and worse, of course, but also her desperation. But did you just do that straight through, or were scenes interspersed? How did you do that?
It was, I mean, what I always kind of find is that it's pretty uncommon for it to be shot consecutively, but everyone does their best. So, if like the wedding stuff being closer to the end, like that was great, and the stuff with James Norton, who was my brother, like we did that in the beginning. So that those kinds of things are great, and I find that a lot of people try to do that.
And you really did get to ride the bike?
Well, yes and no. I mean, I did, and there was also like a man with like fake boobs and a wig and lots of tattoos, and he did all the tough stuff, and I would do like the first part or the last part,
Based on where the journey was in the story, did you approach playing Lacey differently? Like, no, at the end, did you approach a scene differently than you would have a scene that was in the beginning of the show?
Yes, definitely. What was the thing we were? Gosh, I can't remember what it was exactly, but there was some sort of measurement that Joe and I had, which was sort of like a balance between her anxious self and her authentic self. So we were sort of like, each scene was a modulation of like what she really felt and what the kind of the artifice was. And because so much of this is obviously about performance, and I mean, it's an interesting time to be an actor, because I feel like kind of everyone in a way now has this kind of platform and is performing, and it's like the stuff that we were just used to sort of playing around with and dealing with and all of that, like everyone is kind of dealing with right now. So I think that was sort of that was what Joe and I were always trying to get at, was how much of whatever given thing was she feeling in every single scene. Kind of.
You work with some great actors in this. I love Cherry Jones as the truck driver. I was scared to death during that scene, but then I was like, oh no, she's gonna be like the one person who's nice to her just because she's a nice person.
She's like a 1.1.
Yeah, exactly. 1.1s. But talk about how you worked with the other actors, because if you're in character, and I know some actors like stay away from the other actors, that sort of thing. How did you work with this one?
No, I'm like the least methody person ever. As I demonstrated at the age of 10, when I would snap out of character suddenly. I mean, like, how creepy were those? Like, was that footage? Probably. Like, someone was like, "What is that child doing? Someone stop her!" No, sets are like so fun, and I have so much fun, and I just and that's how it is. Wait, I'm just realizing that my Spanx are completely revealed. Okay, so anyway, but I just want to say something about Cherry Jones. Okay, this is so complicated. I think I got it. Thank you. Cherry was like my high school. So I grew up outside of New York City. I grew up in Westchester County, and Cherry was performing on Broadway a lot, and so I would always go into the theater or go into New York and go to TKTS and like get tickets to whatever show she was doing. So Cherry Jones was like my high school acting. Like I had a picture of her like in my room and stuff, for real. And she and my first movie was The Village, and I had one scene with Cherry in The Village, and this scene was really kind of like this moment of like a character imparting wisdom and sort of being sort of the person that sort of like turns the story, and Cherry on that movie, I mean, it's like I could start like crying talking about her. I mean, she's just everything that you would think she is, and I'm sure you guys have all had some interaction or some degree of like, I'm sure you all know that. And then I just didn't see. She was one of those people where I just like kind of never bumped into her for over 10 years, and then I bumped into her last year at the Critics' Choice Awards, and it was right before I was going to go shoot this. And I saw her across the room, and I like made my way through, like ducking during commercial breaks. and I went to her and I was like, Jerry. And she was like, Bryce, I'm playing the truck driver. And my jaw dropped and I burst into tears. And it was like kind of a mess. Like I had to step away because like then it was like the Critics' Choice again. I was like, whoa. But it's just sometimes you have these moments with actors and people you get to work with, and she's I don't know if she's totally a mentor to me, and so I mean what a huge privilege. Gosh, she's the best woman.
Which scene was harder for you? Maybe the wedding scene at the end, or even the jail scene at the very, very end? Was there a scene that was a little more challenging for you than others?
See, this is so funny. Like, okay, so I thought two things when you asked me that question. I thought what was hard in the wedding scene was that it was so bright, and what was hard in the jail scene was that I had dislocated my jaw. I was like, it's always so funny because it's like the acting part is the fun part. Like the acting part is the like, there's challenges, but you sort of, you kind of figure them out in at least 80%. It's very rare people will move on unless you figure it out at least a little bit. And then there's music and editing, and it's all good, sort of, sometimes. But yeah, when I think of scenes, what I mostly think about are the sort of external obstacles that we need to overcome in order to do the best work that we can. And one of my friends from college, he's very critical of me. He's so critical of me. And Evelyn, it's Ilian, my friend Ilian. Oh yeah. So and he whenever he's being critical, I'm always like, Ilian, you don't understand. Like, this is not my best. This is my best given the circumstances, given that like a hurricane was coming in and we had one take, and that take the sound got messed up, and then we fixed it in ADR afterwards. Like, those are the obstacles that I always remember more than the actual kind of scene, because that's the fun, So I have really light, sensitive eyes. And I went to set that morning, and there was all this. They were like, we put covers everywhere, and it was all this dappling light, and it was actually like magnifying. It was magnifying the light, and I literally was like this, and I was like, okay, I don't know how this is going to go. And it was the morning, and I was making no sense to myself. I was like calling Los Angeles and being like, maybe I can get contact lenses. Oh no, it takes 24 hours to ship something here. Like, I was trying to think of a way to block the sun. And then finally we just had to do it. And Joe was like, you just have to somehow make it a part of a thing. And then the spookiest thing happened, which was right before I stepped out on the scene. I prayed to my grandmother, who is an actress, my dad's mom, and she passed away. And I always pray to her every single time before a take. And I guess all Howards are superstitious. And it was bright, closed my eyes to pray. He yelled action. I stepped on, and there was shade for the entire day. They then turned around to do the reverse shot, and it was sunny, and everything cut together perfectly. Is that so weird? No need for a round of applause. I did nothing. My grandma, on the other hand. So there was that, and then in that scene where I get arrested, like, how I slam on my face, I just kind of like knocked my jaw, and I didn't think anything of it. And I was like, oh, it's kind of clicking. And then when I was shooting that scene, when we had to do like the fuck you part, I was like, oh shit. Like, I like opening my mouth, like it started to lock a little bit. So the trick of that scene was, how do I like have a breakdown and do that yelling, but not so far that I would get lockjaw? Isn't that silly that that's what a scene becomes about? But that was really fun too. I'll say one more thing. So in that scene, Joe plays music a lot, and he played Max Richter, a song from Max Richter. I recommend all of you guys go check out Max Richter on Spotify or whatever, because his music is like so emotional and so good to listen to before a scene. And so I think the score, I think it was Sleep was what it was, and so he was playing that while we were shooting the scene. And it's so rare that you get a chance to actually sort of experience something and you don't know whether or not you're being filmed in that moment. And that's so freeing and wonderful. And it was kind of in that I kept looking up and I kept seeing kind of fuzzies, and I kept being like, oh yeah, I don't have my character doesn't have her lenses in anymore. And Joe didn't really know what I was doing. And then he came into the room and he looked up and he saw it and he was like, oh, we need to shoot the fuzzies. And then like the day kind of became about the fuzzies, and one of the producers became like really upset. They were like, why are we shooting these light things? I'm like, trust me, it's so poetic. You have no idea. So it's, fun.
It was, though. It was very poetic. I loved it. I love that touch. We have a couple audience questions. Thanks, you guys, for sending questions. Melissa, where's Melissa? Hi, Melissa. So Melissa wants to know, do you prefer working on TV or films? You haven't done quite as much TV, but does it feel different to you? Either medium?
Well, you know what? So my only experience is film, and I love working in a film, and this was very similar to doing a film because it was, one isolated event. It wasn't serialized. It's a director who this was one of his first. I know that he did television early in his career, but he hasn't done television a lot recently. So the process felt just like making a movie, but I was shocked by the amount of people who watched this, and if it wasn't on television, that would not have happened. I have gotten more people. I've been recognized more from Black Mirror than any other film that I've done, including Jurassic World. And more friends and family and everything have and people in my life wrote me the first 3 days that this was available on Netflix than Jurassic World. Like, I went back and checked because I was like, this is bizarre. So our world is changing, and the way in which things are being viewed is changing, and television is changing. So I love the specificity that I love the time that film gives you. Like shooting a television show is just crazy. And so many things become about efficiency, which I understand, and we just need to figure out how to, do rehearsals on our own or whatever, so that we can perform at the rate at which television really requires us to. So I love having that extra time, but like I had a little bit of like an existential crisis I was like, do I only want to do TV now? Like, this is unbelievable. And my husband has only worked in television his entire career. And way more people come up to him. Way more people. We've been together for 16 years. And I've always been like, oh, it's because of the comfort. And I'm like, no, more people are watching television. It's super interesting.
Yeah. When you were filming this, did you feel like it was something special or something that might land? I don't know if you think about how things will be received, but did it feel like it might connect with people?
Well, I think we were all so excited about being a part of this show and what the show is saying, and the script was impeccable and nothing changed. And that feels good because you have a goal and we're all going out to achieve it, and that feels like summer camp, that feels like fun, and there's something that it feels right when every single day things are changing and you're like, oh, who is my character today? Like, that's when you start to worry. So we weren't given indications to have concerns. After the fact, and even after I watched it, I remember telling like my husband and stuff, so in the beginning I'm like I'm giving a performance, but so it's going to seem like I'm doing bad acting, but it's kind of intentional. Like I was qualifying it. So it's kind of, I was only nervous when I thought about it too deeply because it was something a little bit different and new.
Another question from Ashley A. Is Ashley here? Hey, Ashley. How did playing this role change your view on social media? Did it change it quite a bit?
Well, it's so like this is my view of social media. And I only joined, when I got the treatment for this, I had only been on social media for 2 weeks. I joined social media last Thanksgiving. I get really messed up at the beginning of the year because it feels really wrong to be, like, it feels right for me to be like last year, but it's like Thanksgiving 2015. So anyway, just so you know, that's why whenever I talk about time, I sound like I'm struggling. So I had just been on social media for 2 weeks, which took forever for me to join. And I was very concerned about it. Like I had no idea what to put for my tagline. I'm like, what do I say about myself? Like, I don't like, what side of myself, who am I? And then when I read this, it was sort of like, it was all of my concerns and fears, kind of manifested in a way. And so I was able to sort of work through those things while I was doing this. And I would hope that it's given me a bit of more self-awareness, I guess. But I don't know. I'm always still freaking out about social media and just feeling like there's something I'm not getting about it. Like it's a very, because it's new for all of us, so there's no mastery yet. And yet there's those few people who seem to have mastered something, and it seems like a desirable and important thing, but we don't quite know why. and it seems like something you are not allowed to opt out of anymore. And if you opt out of it, then that's like you're saying something, like you're taking a stand, and it's not all positive. And so I don't like it's really confusing. So this has done me no good being a part of this. I'm still in a tailspin about social media.
Yeah, okay. Sahar, is Sahar here? Hey, Sahar, hi. Sahar, like a lot of us, grew up watching Happy Days, your dad in Happy Days. And what advice did he give you when you really started pursuing acting and the career and how you handle everything?
Gosh, see, it's so tricky because the way in which he gives me advice is like very nonchalant. So he's not one of those people, he's not like a self-important person. He's like an aw shucks person. So like he'll give me advice and then the next day I'll be like, that was really insightful. But it's like already over. So I don't have like the memory in my head of like him sitting at his desk and like giving me like advice. And so I would say it's just, you know what? So he says really great things. The thing that actions speak louder than words, and he's just this really wonderful, good, hardworking, ethical person who keeps his ego in check in a giant way. Giant way, because my mom would have nothing else. So I think definitely watching him has been more valuable, I think, than any single piece of advice that he could ever give me. Because it's the culmination too. That's what I've seen, is that it's not how he's responding to any specific thing in any given moment. It's the consistency of his ethics and his values in the work that he's doing. And over a span of over half a century. So that's kind of the impact that's made the biggest impact. Yeah.
Well, the SAG Awards are January 29th. You guys can watch them on TNT and TBS. Best of luck that night, hopefully.
Thank you guys. Thank you so much.
Thanks for being here. Thanks everybody for all the great questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.